As I'm sure you are all aware of at the moment, Battlefield 5 is in something of a content slump. Due to the global world health crisis that we're all dealing with, coinciding with a chapter of the live service that hasn't really had much happening with it, the game has taken a rather big hit when it comes to general entertainment value. With very little for players to actually do, I've noticed less and less people discussing the game on social media, and that's usually a good indicator as to whether a game is worth giving a shot or not. Well, despite this, there are still a few things that I can bring you in terms of news that paint a slightly brighter picture for the game moving forwards. Just before we get into that though, if you're not currently subscribed to my channel but you do tune in to watch my videos, then please do consider clicking that subscribe button. Nearly 60% of the views on my channel come from viewers who either aren't logged into YouTube or who aren't subscribed. And I'd love it if we could get this channel past the 500,000 subscriber milestone. We are very close to it. Despite Battlefield 5 being in a slump, I do still like the game and I love the franchise. It's where my heart lies in terms of gaming. So if you want to keep up to date with Battlefield 5, or if you fancy some Warzone content as well, I've really enjoyed making those videos recently, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Okay then, so what's going on with Battlefield 5 at the moment? First of all, an update from our official source, Adam Freeman, the global community manager for the Battlefield franchise. The game will soon, apparently in the next update in May, be getting some properly authentic default soldier outfits. We spoke about this in a previous video, but I know it's something that a portion of the community around Battlefield 5 have been asking of DICE for just the longest time. And so it's great to see the team finally getting around to making some of these changes. Now, first of all, Freeman shared these images, I think a week ago, that showed a work-in-progress version of the default outfits, receiving colour changes to bring them in line with what people might expect from British and German soldiers during World War II. The team then took on some feedback from the community. It was posted on Reddit, social media and the forums, and they've come back with a different set of images showing an update here. The first one is a tweak to the brown colour of the British soldier uniform. The previous one was apparently a bit too bright and it lacked some of the colour depth that players really expected. And then the second one is of a German soldier who's now been equipped with a Stahlhelm helmet as standard. And I think that might have been slightly recoloured as well. Now, based on these changes, it's clear that the German default uniform does look a lot closer to what I think players think of when they picture a German soldier in World War II. The British soldier still doesn't look as good as it could do, but I think this is partly because the clothing options that DICE has in the game really aren't geared towards giving the British soldier an authentic look. A lot of the clothing options are actually American clothing options that were used during World War II. Now, I don't think it's likely that DICE will be building any more default clothing options for the British. They'll simply be tweaking the colours to provide a better general overall look. Perhaps in the future we could see some more authentic British clothing options, maybe if DICE brings the war back around to Europe at some point after the Pacific, but at least for now, I think these changes are a good step forward for the sections of the community who've been asking for more authenticity in Battlefield 5. It is worth noting though that these colour changes and these very slight tweaks to the uniforms, they're only being applied to the default looks of the soldiers, and so the more vibrant clothing options that we've had, all those cosmetics that came through the Tides of War and that have been in the armory for the last year and a half, those are largely set to stay the same. So if people are customizing their soldiers, they're still going to look perhaps a little bit out of character for World War II, but if you want the default look, DICE is updating those so you could switch all your soldiers to the default look and they will look a lot more authentic. Okay then, next up we're going to move over to the slightly darker, seedier side of Battlefield 5 information, the data mined information. This is where many content creators fear to tread, but not this one. I'll suffer the dangers so that you don't have to. Our resident data miner Temple has unearthed some little nuggets in the last week or so that could point towards larger impacts in the next few months of Battlefield 5's live service. But as always, make sure you take delivery of your truckload of salt for this next section, because none of this is official information and it's all subject to change. First of all, let's talk about Pacific Ocean. Previously, this was rumoured to be some kind of map or maybe a rotation for the Pacific Theatre, but lots of people were leaning towards a fifth map. And maybe it would introduce some kind of naval-dominated battle with watercraft and planes taking centre stage. And previous data mines revealed new scoring lines for actions like a pilot bailing out from their plane, and that added a bit more credibility to these rumours. The latest on this potential map, or whatever it is that in light of the cancelled April patch for Battlefield 5, the introduction of this thing has been delayed. Week 9's challenges within the Tides of War, previously data mined by Temple Yal, featured a challenge asking players to win a round on the Pacific Ocean. But that's now been removed and replaced with something different. Still to this point, we've had no official communication from DICE about a 5th map for the Pacific Theatre, but we have been told that during the rest of Chapter 6, that we shouldn't expect any new content whatsoever. No new weapons, no new gadgets, vehicles, cosmetics, nothing at all really. So perhaps that statement of no new content was made after DICE made the decision to delay all of the content that had been scheduled to appear later in the Tides of War for Chapter 6. We know that the Doppelschuss flare pistol, that was all ready to go besides a game-breaking bug, so it really wasn't ready to go, was it? But it was delayed and pushed back, and it's now likely coming out in the May update, which could be Chapter 7 or some kind of inter-period between chapters. So this rumoured Pacific Ocean map or playlist or whatever it is, because we don't really know, that's been delayed as well based on the changes to the Tides of War structure. Then we need to talk about a potential step forward on the restructuring of the Grand Operations mode in Battlefield 5. The mode hasn't received any new content since I think January 2019, which is always a bad sign considering DICE used the mode as a heavy part of their marketing for the game. The community never really warmed to the game mode, and the general feeling is that it's vastly inferior to the Battlefield 1 implementation. The fact that DICE didn't even bother to implement any Grand Operations for the Pacific expansion, that tells me that they realised their mistake with Grand Operations. They ended up using the Breakthrough game mode as their main focus, which is basically as close as you can get to Operations in Battlefield 5. Previously on the channel, we have discussed certain parts of the code revealing additions of the Operations mode. The first one was Battalions. That came in Update 4.4 in the summer of 2019, alongside some kind of additional Airborne game mode. It was separate to the one available in Grand Operations, but not really sure what that meant. Then in Update 4.6, the Operations game mode was added into the code. Update 5.0, that introduced new UI messages for battalions and reinforcements. And lastly, in the most recent update, Update 6.2, a new setting has been added to enable or disable a reinforcement phase for the Operations game mode. Now, all of this work points towards an implementation of an older setup of Operations into Battlefield 5, which, if that did happen, I would be very happy, because I love the Operations game mode. However, I do think it has to be said that it's a little bit late to be doing this kind of work. The feedback has been coming in since day one of Battlefield 5, even before that with the alpha and the beta, highlighting that the mode had several issues and pressure points that needed to be addressed. I made a video not long after the launch of the game saying that the mode was inferior to the Battlefield 1 version, and maybe reverting back to that design would be the best course of action. So if DICE had gone ahead and done that work a few months after launch based on community feedback, then that would have been great. It would have been a live service game making proper changes that would have made it better for the community. But now, looking at the info we have today from these data mines and looking at the timeline, nearly 17 months after launch, it's hardly a good reaction time to the feedback that was being delivered all the way back in 2018. As I say, I'd love to see the game mode back in Battlefield 5 and returning it to the Battlefield 1 implementation, but with it happening so late in the day, potentially only a very core audience left playing Battlefield 5, was there really any point in doing it? Maybe it was just worth putting the mode to bed and forgetting about it and maybe making good in the next Battlefield game, I'm not sure. Just seems like a really late stage change to make, when the change should have been made a really long time ago. And then lastly for today, we've got a cheeky look at a new weapon. This is the LAD's light machine gun, an absolutely brilliant name, I love that one. This weapon has been present in the files in a more progressively finished form for some time, and it's a Soviet weapon, a prototype weapon I might add, from the World War II era. Only 2 units of it were ever produced, and it was never accepted into service with the Soviet army, but it does look pretty cool, I've got to say that. This weapon now has new sound effects applied to it, with proper systems for overheating and reloading being implemented as well. And it's being handled as a light machine gun. You can see Tempoyal here aiming down the sights with it. And there's also a weapon inspect feature built for the weapon too, suggesting it is very close to a finished state. I don't want to say it is finished because clearly it's not, otherwise it would have been released, but it could then sit in the files ready to go for some kind of Soviet release later down the line. This all points towards some kind of Eastern Front influence in the future for Battlefield 5. Lots of fans have been wishing for DICE to go and move on from the Pacific to the Eastern Front, and this could be a sign that that move is coming. I don't think a big update like the Eastern Front is going to be arriving until probably the later half of 2020. It's a big update like the Pacific, and that took a long time to implement. So it might not come for a while, but it is interesting to see what stage some of the work might be at for an Eastern Front expansion in Battlefield 5. So there is still stuff happening for Battlefield 5, it's just it might be a bit further away than we'd like it to be. So we're going to have to be patient and wait a little longer. And just a reminder, the next update for Battlefield 5 is coming in May, so maybe another 4 weeks from now, so still some time to wait. Thanks very much for watching today, guys. Drop me a rating and a comment, it is always appreciated, and I'll catch you all in the next one.